After a week of non-stop attacks and unwanted controversy over the WEF's Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy's Rey movie, Lucasfilm suddenly dropped an announcement that on paper should please fans, namely the return of John Favreau. That is what we call desperation. In the early hours of January 9th, little more than a week after Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy reminded everyone why they fell out of love with Star Wars in her New Year's comments to CNN, Lucasfilm made a special announcement, and they did it on their website, starwars.com. It's fairly short, so let's read the whole thing and then dig into it. The Mandalorian and Grogu are embarking on a new adventure to movie theaters, so not Disney Plus then. Directed by John Favreau and produced by Favreau, Kathleen Kennedy, and Dave Filoni, The Mandalorian and Grogu will go into production in 2024. I have loved telling stories set in the rich world that George Lucas created, said Favreau. The prospect of bringing The Mandalorian and his apprentice Grogu to the big screen is extremely exciting. John Favreau and Dave Filoni have ushered into Star Wars two new and beloved characters, and this new story is a perfect fit for the big screen, added Kathleen Kennedy, president of Lucasfilm. The Mandalorian and Grogu will lead Lucasfilm's ongoing feature development slate, including films helmed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, James Mangold, and Dave Filoni, who is also currently developing Ahsoka Season 2, among those in the works. In other words, all the previously announced movies are still happening. This is the way. Okay, first of all, the timing. As I already alluded to, this smells of desperation, and here's why. John Favreau isn't so much the proverbial new hope where fans are concerned, he is the last hope. The first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, which were done by him while Kathleen Kennedy was otherwise occupied with that Children of Blood and Bone thing, even though her agent Dave Filoni was in the room with Favreau, was the only unconditional win Lucasfilm have had in the entire Kathleen Kennedy era. As such, bringing Favreau back is just about the only thing that would create any level of excitement among actual Star Wars fans, as opposed to the activists not interested in spending money on Star Wars, that Lucasfilm nonetheless has shifted the entire company around in order to cater to. Either way, the return of John Favreau is big news. I mean, this is one of the architects of the MCU, and he's now directing and producing a theatrical Star Wars feature film. That is a much bigger story than the return of Rey, and certainly than either Dave Filoni, James Mangold, or WEF planned Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy directing their movies. And yet, all of those were announced with fanfare in front of a live audience at Star Wars Celebration last year. By contrast, this piece of far bigger news was written off in a press release published on their website. That's indicative of a lot of things right there. By rights, they should have waited with announcing this for this year's Star Wars Celebration, where it would have been the big news dominating the entire news cycle. That they didn't tells me a couple of things. First among them that the overwhelmingly negative response to the Rey movie and to director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy of WEF fame has Disney senior management freaked the fuck out. They are used to backlash by now, but they may not be used to this level of it. And as importantly, this little support from the entertainment media complex. Yeah, Forbes wrote a few articles attacking the fans on their behalf, and so did a number of other publications. But by and large, the entertainment media complex did not rush to Disney's defense this time the way they have done before. As such, I think rushing this announcement is a desperate attempt at shifting attention away from Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy of WEF fame and her flop-in-the-making Rey movie that nobody, absolutely nobody willing to pay for Star Wars has any interest in paying to see. This whole thing reeks of a Hail Mary. There's even more that can be derived from this rushed announcement as well, though I'd like to stress that this is informed speculation. I don't know anything of what I'm about to say for a fact. But I would imagine that this project is still relatively early in development, otherwise we'd have heard about it before. Of course, that doesn't mean it isn't fast-tracked as hell right now. More specifically, I do not think that this existed 3/4 of a year ago during the last Star Wars celebration, when the James Mangold movie, the Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy Rey movie, and Dave Filoni's Mandoverse movie were all announced. There was no hint of any John Favreau back then, quite the contrary. Here's Kathleen Kennedy sharing her excitement for the Dave Filoni movie, which was then intended to end the entire Mandoverse.
I think people are really excited for Dave Filoni.
And we sat down and talked with Dave about it. You know what we're seeing, and Dave talked a lot about this. Obviously, John and Dave, I wouldn't do it without Dave.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave created so much of what was in Clone Wars and Rebels, and, well, that's really building toward what Dave's doing in the future space. Certainly looking at what Dave's been doing with Ahsoka, he's, what's great about Jim is he's a writer-director, much like Dave is. So that Dave is very influenced by Kurosawa and Japanese films. Dave's.
Not much mention of John Favreau there, was it? Which is interesting considering that he created the Mandoverse. Couple that with the fact that John Favreau's character was killed in Season 3 of The Mandalorian, and the signal was pretty clear. There was a civil war at Lucasfilm, but it was over now, and the good guys lost. And yet, now he's suddenly developing a Mandoverse movie, which has got to be stepping on the toes of Dave's movie, which again, according to this announcement, is still happening, along with the James Mangold movie and the WEF-affiliated Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy's Rey movie. So why then this last-minute add-on? Again, this is pure speculation in my end, but I imagine we are looking at direct interference from Bob Iger here. It wouldn't be the first time that happened. I mean, Favreau reportedly had no artistic desire to do those Jungle Book or Lion King live-action remakes. That was, apparently, Disney asking him to take one for the team for a massive payday, and I think this is probably more of the same. I could be wrong, but I think this is Iger telling Favreau, you need to step in and unfuck this mess, as clearly no one else can do it. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny proved that Kathleen Kennedy certainly can't, and Ahsoka Season 1 proved that Filoni also can't. And so, I would imagine that Bob Iger went above Kathleen Kennedy and greenlit a Favreau Mandalorian movie, allowing him to finish what he started. In the process, giving Filoni less story threads to worry about in the Thrawn movie that he is going to muck up. Ever the consummate professional and team player, Favreau agreed. That's what I think happened here. But that aside, does the return of John Favreau for a Mandalorian movie make me excited? Nope, not at all, not at this stage. Too late. We already know that Favreau's plan and roadmap was ruined the moment Gina Carano was fired, as that led to the direct cancellation of both Favreau's Rangers of the New Republic series and Favreau's Cara Dune series. As a direct result of that, the Book of Boba Fett was compromised, being forced to cram in the Mandalorian storylines, and The Mandalorian Season 3 just ended it all with Filoni and his witch wife taking over. Favreau coming in now only means that the movie under his direct control will be better than it otherwise would be, but that's not enough. James Mangold is still rewriting the past of Star Wars to fit the vision of Kathleen Kennedy in his movie. Dave Filoni is still screwing up the present of Star Wars by mauling Thrawn in his movie, also according to the vision of Kathleen Kennedy. And finally, WEF plant Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is still destroying the future of Star Wars in her activist Rey movie, again according to the vision of Kathleen Kennedy. I wouldn't be surprised if, like in Aquaman, there's some bug eating in it, but either way, against that backdrop, a John Favreau Mandalorian movie doesn't matter. If everything else had been cancelled and John Favreau was placed in charge of everything, then we might be talking. But as it is, this is too little, too late. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments.